Okay. Oh, I guess we're going already.
What up?
What was it?
What's up? We're back for Genesis 4.
Genesis 4.
Yeah, we get some first murder in human history.
Ooh.
Gonna go down. I didn't.
You're gonna do spoiler?
Yeah, I did. I jumped too far ahead.
Time.
Well, you're right. Close your ears. No.
That's all right.
Yeah.
Guys, we're really excited to bring you Genesis chapter 4. We were looking at Genesis 1 through 3.
Yep.
And Genesis 4, we get to see kind of what a culmination of what happened in Genesis 3, right?
Yep.
Sin enters the world.
Yep.
And it gets pretty nasty pretty quick.
Downhill quick, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So.
And this is another special episode, though, because as you can tell, we're here together.
Right.
And so you got Genesis 3 and 4 with us here together. Genesis 5 won't, unfortunately, be, but we like the combo episodes.
That's true.
Yep.
We know who to. By the way, there's one of us to blame for not having regular combo episodes. I'm not going to point that person out. That person is going to be pointed out. That person is going to be pointed out.
Here's the thing.
In the Call Your Friends Out episode that we mentioned in episode 1.
Yeah.
Genesis 1.
Yeah.
So we'll call everyone out then.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and get started. Genesis chapter 4. If you don't mind, I'll get it started off.
Hit it with it, yeah.
Genesis 4. We're in the NASB.
Always.
turn to that section if you have your Bible in front of you.
Yeah.
Cain and Abel.
Yeah.
Now the man had relations with his wife Eve, and she conceived and gave birth to Cain. And she said, I have gotten a man-child with the help of the Lord. Again, she gave birth to his brother Abel. And Abel was a keeper of the flocks, but Cain was a tiller of the ground. So it came about in the course of time that Cain brought an offering to the Lord of the fruit of the ground. Abel, on his part, also brought of the firstlings of his flock and of their fat portions. And the Lord had regard for Abel and for his offering, but for Cain and for his offering he had no regard. So Cain became very angry, and his countenance fell. Then the Lord said to Cain, Why are you angry? And why has your countenance fallen? If you do well, will not your countenance be lifted up? And if you do not do well, sin is crouching at the door, and its desire is for you, but you must master it. Cain told Abel his brother, and Cain told Abel his brother, and it came about when they were in the field that Cain rose up against Abel his brother and killed him.
Man, so that's obviously a pretty negative start, but before we get to the murder, in verse 1 is actually a verse that a lot of scholars talk about. So toward the end of verse 1 it says, Eve is talking about her birth, about her giving birth, and she said, I have gotten a man-child with the help of the Lord. So I don't know if in your Bibles it maybe has something italicized, the help of the Lord or with the help of the Lord. So some scholars argue or discuss that. Remember in last chapter, Genesis 3:15, we talked about how God gave the promise of the Messiah. And so some scholars argue that Eve believes, because she trusted God for the promise of the Messiah, that Eve maybe was assuming that the Messiah was coming like right away, that was going to be the next baby born. So this idea, some scholars read it as, I have gotten a man-child, the Lord. So just kind of pointing once again to this promised Messiah in the Old Testament, that it was from the very beginning of the Bible.
So did the original Hebrew, does it say man-child Lord, or does it just say man-child?
No, it has the Lord, but the problem is that the original Hebrew is hard to write. It's hard to understand. There's a lot of things that are more clear than others. this is one of those verses that isn't as clear as a lot of the other verses.
So when she says, I have gotten a man-child with the help of the Lord,
with the help.
That obviously means she gave birth.
Yeah, she gave birth, but what I'm saying is that in the original, they argue that in the original Hebrew, that wasn't with the help of. I have gotten a man-child, the Lord. In other words, I have had the Messiah. That's what she believes, right? She's not making the Bible's not making a claim that...
That's why it's italicized here.
Right.
With the help of.
Right. That's why it's italicized, because it wasn't in the original. It's kind of like, since languages are different, sometimes we insert certain words in our language to help it flow smoother, right? If we can't do direct translations. But anyway, so it's just an interesting verse. So I'm not sure. I think when I heard that explanation, I thought the way it was explained to me, it made a lot of sense. Maybe that's not true. Maybe this is the best way to understand it, that she was like, hey, God helped me by giving me another child, right? So maybe it's as simple as that. But the point is, the verse is worth looking into.
Absolutely. And I think it's worth noting that when you're studying the Bible, you might see something italicized. You might see a footnote as well. And when you click on that footnote, it might give you a better or a different understanding of what that word actually is, because there is translations in this. So don't ever be afraid if you have a question about a particular line, then you can always look it up, or you can just click on the footnote. So then it looks like Eve had Abel, gave birth to Abel, after she gave birth to Cain. So Cain was her firstborn, Abel was her secondborn, and it looks like they had two different jobs. Abel was the keeper of the flocks. Cain
like a shepherd,
was a tiller of the ground.
Right.
And after which they came to a point where it was appropriate to bring an offering to the Lord. And God appears to be satisfied with Abel's offering, but is not satisfied with Cain's offering. What are your thoughts there?
So I've heard it said that Abel approached God with the right heart. See, the problem is that, or one of the difficulties is there's very limited information here, right? When we read this, we want to kind of know all the details, right? But either way, we know enough to know that Abel is being obedient and Cain is not. But so some of what I've read suggests that Abel was bringing he was bringing his offering to God with the right intention. He was bringing a sacrificial amount to God. He was doing those things. And Cain was kind of taking the offering just very casually. He wasn't taking it seriously. He didn't have the right conditioned heart before the Lord.
And I think it's fair to say, whenever you read this, Abel, on his part, brought of the firstlings of his flock and of their fat portions. Sounding like Abel's bringing his best.
Yes, exactly.
Whereas Cain, on the other hand, Cain just brought an offering to the Lord. Of the fruit of the ground. And it further goes on to say, obviously, there's a difference there, right? Cain brings an offering. Abel brings his best.
Exactly.
Which I think it's fair to say, going back to your intentions comment, Abel's heart seems like it was in the right place. When you're bringing your best, you're giving your best. Whereas Cain, on the other hand, he seems like just doing his duty. You know?
Just checking off a box. I'm supposed to do this, whatever, kind of a thing.
So I think we get caught up in the fact that they both brought anything at all, we kind of set the bar low. We see this and we see like, well, Cain, he brought something, didn't he? Shouldn't that be enough, you know? And God, on the other hand, says, you're setting the bar way too low. There.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Not only do you need to bring something, but you need to bring your best.
Yeah.
So I think we could kind of take from that in our own lives a different perspective that giving just anything at all, that's not enough.
Yeah. No, I mean, Christ said in the Gospels, where you put your money, your heart will also be. And so, without trying to dive into that or make these parallel, it's the idea of the level of investment you're making in something causes you to be that much more intentioned in it.
Right.
And so obviously that's we should bring a high level of investment to the things of God, because that should be a huge priority in our life. And if we're not investing in it, then it isn't a priority.
Right.
So
what does God say right after? Cain was angry, and he was upset. And the Lord gets said, "Why are you angry? Why has your countenance fell? If you do well, will not your countenance be lifted up? And if you do not do so well, sin is crouching at the door, and its desire is for you, but you must master it." So Cain gets angry.
Yep.
He's unhappy that the low bar that he set was not accepted well by God. And then God basically says, "Listen, this is on you. Don't blame me for this."
And God gives him a chance to correct it. He's like, "Look, if you take the correct steps from here, it'll be fine." And then God warns him, like, don't fall into the sin. Don't give in to that,
Right.
Yeah.
I think we should be on guard that we should always be giving our best. And as soon as you're not giving your best, it sounds like you're susceptible to sin.
Yeah. And so obviously it came to this terrible event in verse 8 where Cain killed Abel. And so really, I mean, this is one of those deals, this Abel, we don't have any content here to suggest that Abel and Cain had any kind of conflict. It was just Cain was mad that Abel was being righteous, right? And so was jealous, and so just killed him.
So as we said earlier, sin escalated quickly.
Yeah.
These are the first two offspring of Adam and Eve, and they're already literally killing each other.
Yeah, it's crazy.
You think you got a bad home life?
Yeah.
Not quite at this level. I mean, I'm guessing. So,
but also, applicationally, I like how you pointed out, and just for my own life, I know that like when I'm not taking time for quiet times, meaning when I'm not having like my daily Bible reading, when I'm not having the consistent prayer time, when I'm not studying my Bible, I notice it's so much easier for sin to come in my life. It's so much easier for me to lose that sensitivity to the spiritual things, and to, like I said, sin, losing that sensitivity of, man, I don't want sin in my life. And then also just like a distance from God. It's also, apart from the sin aspect, I just feel more vulnerable, more like likely to be bummed out, you know what I'm saying, and just those things. And so when we're not making God that priority, or our relationship with Him the priority, it opens up more room to fall into things, So, unfortunately.
Let's move on to verse 9.
Okay, so then the Lord said to Cain, "Where is Abel your brother?" And he said, "I do not know. Am I my brother's keeper?" He said, "What have you done? The voice of your brother's blood is crying to me from the ground. Now you are cursed from the ground, which has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. When you cultivate the ground, when you cultivate the ground, it will no longer yield its strength to you. You will be a vagrant and a wanderer of the earth." Cain said to the Lord, "My punishment is too great to bear. Behold, you have driven me this day from the face of the ground, and from your face I will be hidden, and I will be a vagrant and a wanderer on the earth, and whoever finds me will kill me." So the Lord said to him, "Therefore, whoever kills Cain, vengeance will be taken on him sevenfold." And the Lord appointed a sign for Cain, so that no one finding him would slay him. So here, I think that God takes, once again, another sensitive approach, even though this is such a high degree of sin. So remember in the garden, he said, Adam, where are you? Right? Like Adam. And so here is like, hey, Cain, where is your brother Abel? Right? Obviously, God knows what happened in the events, but he's giving Cain a chance, right? And so Cain straight up lies, just, I don't know, am I my brother's keeper?
God gives Cain a chance to repent.
Yeah.
Perhaps.
God gives Cain a chance to own up to it, repent, whatever. God starts the dialogue in a way, instead of just coming on, Cain, why did you kill your brother? Right? He didn't do that. He didn't even ask why, if I remember right. It's what have you done? Right? And so it's just God approaches Cain with questions that allow for open dialogue instead of just this condemning, even though he did end up punishing him because of what significant sin Cain did.
Yeah, and his punishment's listed right here. When you cultivate the ground, it will no longer yield its strength to you. You will be a vagrant and a wanderer on the earth. That's a pretty big time punishment.
Yeah.
For the rest of your life.
Yeah. For the rest of your life, you'll never be able to grow crops again or anything like that.
You're gonna have a really hard time.
Yeah.
Not only that, you're going to be a wanderer. It sounds like at this point he's separating himself from his family.
Yeah.
Which is another kind of moment of, you know, loneliness in a sense. There's some other comments here by Cain as well. And I think Cain understands the severity of what just happened, obviously, because he says this punishment is too great to bear. And from your face I will be hidden, and I will be a vagrant wanderer on the earth, and whoever finds me will kill me. So, in this moment, I also think it's important to point out, Cain, he just cares about what's happening to him, right?
We don't see remorse.
Yeah, there's absolutely zero remorse in what he's saying. It's that whole saying where you're not sorry. You're just sorry you got caught.
My dad used to tell me that all the time. Yeah.
Right. So, and then this is where you find Cain getting kind of special treatment from God in a sense as well.
Yeah.
And God doesn't want Cain's act to be met with him being murdered or killed by anybody else. And so there's a mention of a
sign, a special sign, right?
Right, a curse essentially that will be on anybody who kills him.
Yeah.
So Cain gets exactly what he wants essentially, or what he thinks he wants, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's concerned that somebody will find him and kill him.
Yeah.
And God says, listen, no one's going to kill, no one, he doesn't promise he's not going to be killed.
Right. Whoever kills you is going to get it 7 times fold. Yeah.
Right. So God outlines his punishment.
Yep.
And to me, he doesn't want anybody else to come in and apply their own punishment.
Right. Yeah, he doesn't want just like a murder free for all.
Right.
Yeah.
So, all right, cool. Let's move on to the next section here. Then Cain went out from the presence of the Lord and settled in the land of Nod, east of Eden. So we have the Garden of Eden.
Yep.
Right here.
Yep.
And they are going
east.
Yep. So Cain had relations with his wife, and she conceived and gave birth to Enoch. And he built a city and called the name of the city Enoch, after the name of his son. Now to Enoch was born Irad, and Irad became the father of Mehujael. And Mehujael became the father of Methuselah. Methuselah became the father of Lamech. Lamech took to himself 2 wives. The name of the one was Ada, and the name of the other was Zillah. Ada gave birth to Jabal. He was the father of those who dwell in tents and have livestock. His brother's name was Jubal, he was the father of all those who played the lyre and pipe. As for Zillah, she also gave birth to Tubal-Cain, the forger of all implements of bronze and iron, and the sister of Tubal-Cain was Naamah. So here we got a ton of analogy, a ton of genealogy,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And it's establishing a genealogy. For what purpose do you think that the Bible establishes genealogy?
Well, I think in that culture, genealogies were important. Obviously, tracing the lineage and things like that. I mean, I know that one of the days we talked about the age of the earth in our first episode.
Mm-hmm.
These genealogies are actually used to help date the age of the earth because a lot of people's the amount of years they lived were given, and so you can kind of tell those that contributes. But I think in our society, most of the Western society today, genealogies, we don't think much about it. But even in small town like rural America, you still have these ideas of, oh, I know who your grandparents were, or whose son are you, or whose grandson are you. And so, like, in a lot of cultures and societies, these are very relevant and important. It's a significant part of history to them. So I think we're looking at a culture that genealogies were super relevant to history.
Right.
That's, but also, though, I do want to say, in line with this, you have, I think God's purpose was, though, to trace the Messiah back. One of God's purposes was to trace the Messiah, because in the book of Matthew, you have Matthew trace the genealogies to Abraham, okay? And then you have Luke, who traces the genealogies all the way back to Adam, right? So without these genealogies, we wouldn't get those, the legitimacy of I don't want to say legitimacy, the fine point of, hey, here's where the Messiah came from. He was promised, here's the lineage, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And whenever I read genealogies in the Bible, the first time I read genealogies, the first several times I read genealogies, I was extremely, extremely bored.
Yes, I agree.
And I remember thinking, I'm just going to skip this entire paragraph.
Yeah. This guy begat that guy, yeah.
And I think it's important to note that if the Bible's a historical document, these genealogies are important.
Yeah, it's totally relevant.
And maybe less for a beginner reader in the Bible.
Right.
But for people who are really doing a lot of research in the Bible and they really want to do deep study, these genealogies are extremely fascinating. And all types of archaeological digs are used from the Bible as well. And so the Bible's more than just a book that you find wise quotes.
Yeah.
This is a historical document.
Yeah.
So I think one of the things I also noticed is the first mention of anyone having two wives. And there's mentioning of both wives here, Ada and Zillah. And it talks about how each one of these ladies had two different sets of kids.
Yeah.
And so let's move on to this last section here.
Okay, so verse 23, Lamech said to his wives, Ada and Zillah, listen to my voice. You wives of Lamech, give heed to my speech. For I have killed a man for wounding me, and a boy for striking me. If Cain is avenged sevenfold, then Lamech 77-fold. I'll go ahead and power through to...
Yeah, let's keep powering
Okay,
through.
yeah. Verse 25, Adam had relations with his wife again, and she gave birth to a son, and named him Seth. For she said, God has appointed me another offspring in place of Abel, for Cain killed him. To Seth, to him also a son was born, and he called him Enosh. Then men began to call upon the name of the Lord.
So, first off, starting off, if we recall earlier in the chapter, Cain was, God ordained that if Cain were to be killed by anyone, they would be avenged 7 times, essentially.
Yeah.
Well, now Lamech this is not God ordained, but this is just Lamech saying something.
Yeah. Yep.
And so we have another instance of murder, I guess the second instance of murder that we see here. And then Adam, so we have all these different genealogies, right? And going on down the line. And then what you see is the Bible going all the way back up to Adam again. And so we're moving right back up. And so we kind of just went down this family tree of Cain.
Yep.
And we took that all the way down to Lamech. And now we're coming back to the very top of that family tree, Adam.
Yep.
To explore a second or a third son for this matter.
Yeah.
Cain was the firstborn.
Yeah.
Abel was the secondborn. Abel was killed.
Yeah.
So now Seth is introduced into this story.
Yeah. Exactly. So we're running through the lineage of Cain. Abel didn't have one because he was killed. Now here we go. We're introduced to Seth. So we're kind of being set up to see this is going to be the new offspring that I mentioned earlier, the Messiah. This will be the offspring that the Messiah will have to come through, because we end up seeing that the Messiah does not come through the lineage of Cain because of what he did. So here we have Seth as kind of this. It's almost this last hope, in a sense, for Adam and Eve, right? Because their first son became a murderer. Right, their second son was the one killed by their first son, and so this is the son that they kind of hope things work out a little better with.
Right.
So, yeah.
The other fascinating thing here is now we're starting to go down Seth's genealogy, kind of like you said. To Seth, to him also a son was born, and he called him Enosh. And so this is with Adam and Eve at the very top. You have these 3 people here at the bottom, one of which was killed. Now you have Enoch and Seth left over. And so Seth, we're starting to go down his family tree, in which case Enosh is born. And then finally it ends this chapter by saying, then men, after Enosh was born, then men began to call upon the name of the Lord. Not necessarily immediately after Enosh, but it seems that
there is somewhat of a timeline given here, though. Like, because it said the word then.
That's
true.
I
agree. Yeah.
Well, it's this whole idea that Cain wasn't this guy who wanted to call on the name. God wasn't a priority to Cain.
Right.
But through Seth, it seems here that on this last verse, that God is a priority through Seth's lineage.
Yeah. And so one of the things here, I think this is kind of maybe the first, what we see of the first revival, right, in Scripture. You see, and I'm wondering if, so for this Genesis chapter 4, I mean, I feel like just for only this far into human history, you see a lot of murder, right? So Cain killed Abel. Now we got Lamech, who killed 2 people. I think these are the only ones that were recorded, but it's possible this could have been just a murderous time.
I think for one person.
Well, for I've killed a man for wounding me and a boy for striking me.
You're right, that is true.
So now what we have is it's potentially, I don't know if this is like a sign of the times, right? Is this like there's a bunch of murder going on, so people start getting that desperation, and then this revival happens. Right. So maybe that's what's going on. Either way, there's a revival. Maybe it's because maybe a lot of murder contributes to revival. Maybe it doesn't. I don't know.
Right.
But either way, revival.
We're not moving on too fast here, but Cain decided to go his way.
Yeah.
Putting himself above God or before God, prioritizing himself.
Yeah.
Enosh and Seth seem to be prioritizing God.
Yeah.
How do you think that's going to turn out?
Way better. That's going to turn out good. I think. Yeah. I mean, we're gonna read more about it, but yeah. I mean, there's going to be obviously there's going to be some more drama happen, but yeah. I mean, we're going to see some really cool more people from Seth's lineage who are going to do some really cool things for God, right?
Right.
There's always going to be bad stuff happen, but think about if you were one of these guys who took your walk with the Lord so serious that you were written in the Bible as being beast mode for God.
And I think it's fair to say that if you're a parent and God is important to you and you're prioritizing God, and you have a kid that sees that, they're more likely to imitate something like that. And so one single person and their spouse can have a huge impact.
I agree.
On the future.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, you can either send an entire generations of people on the wrong track, or you can send them on an amazing track.
Yeah.
A relationship in which you have with God and prioritize God. It's extremely important to recognize that our actions don't only affect ourselves, but can affect literally millions, if not billions.
Or the people because of the trickle effect.
Billions.
Billions.
So let's keep that in mind, that whenever we make decisions throughout the day, that it's not just affecting us.
Yeah, I agree, especially if you're parents, right? Like, I love how you brought that example. If you make bad decisions as a parent, that has that could have lifetime effects on your kids and the decisions they make. And then, like you already talked about, how that trickles down to generations and the large numbers.
Billions.
Yeah.
Cool.
Agree.
Well, any final thoughts on chapter 4?
No, it's just, I'm sorry, my final thought would be, I think sometimes I've had conversations with people like, man, just in your lifetime, the world's gone, been going downhill. And I think that sometimes people forget, the world started out, as we're going to get into, right? We're going to get into a lot of terrible events just within the first sections of the book of Genesis. Bad events that happen. It's like, no, the Lord was always fallen. The world was always fallen, and there was always crazy sin going on, and it's always been an issue. And that's why Christ came and died.
Right.
And so, I think when people go back and read the book of Genesis, maybe they've never read it or haven't read it in a while, I think it can be surprising how dark humanity started out, right? And it's kind of, I was talking to a guy recently, and he was talking about how just his negative view of the world and people and things like that, and wanting his faith in humanity restored. And I'm not convinced. I guess there's this balance, right? Like, I don't want to be a pessimistic person, but I wouldn't try to argue someone into having their faith in humanity restored. I would want to convince them or try to show them why they should have faith in God. You know what I'm saying? Like, faith in humanity is not something, it's so wishy-washy. Like, people are going to let us down. It's a fallen world. But it's faith in God. If we have the right kind of faith in God, we can help humanity without feeling like we need to have faith in them in order for our own emotional stability. And so we see just the brokenness and how quickly it went downhill just in this chapter. It's crazy.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I do love this chapter, and I think we have a lot more exciting stuff to learn going forward.
We're just getting warmed up.
I do want to say, everybody here, me, you, everybody on the planet has two options they get to choose from.
Yeah.
They can either prioritize God, like Abel did, or they can prioritize themselves, like Cain did. And what's more exciting than having the opportunity to potentially influence tens, hundreds, thousands, millions?
Yeah.
Billions.
Billions.
Guys, if y'all are wondering, hey, what should I do with my time every day? Influencing billions of people. Now, you might not have a direct influence on those people, but you'll have an indirect influence through the people that you come in contact with every day.
Yeah.
So ultimately, Jesus had 12 apostles.
Yep.
And those 12 apostles went and discipled people and shared the gospel.
Changed the whole world pretty much.
So anybody who has ever heard of some of that stuff called like the butterfly effect, how one thing that happens can have a huge impact.
Yeah.
If we're not excited about serving God, we should get excited right now.
Yeah.
If at the very least you could have an impact on a huge amount of people.
Yeah.
So anyways, want to end on that note. Thank you for listening today, and hope you have a fantastic rest of the week.
Yeah.